Hello everybody, welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well and that you're all having a great day. The question of the day is, why do you invest in crypto? Is there a particular reason? Are you in it for the money? Are you in it for the decentralization? Are you trying to buy a house? Are you trying to buy a Lambo? And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. This used to be a very popular topic years ago, and I think already twice this year, this topic has reappeared. This was a popular theory back in 2016, 2017, that as time continues to go on, other asset classes would be less favored comparative to Bitcoin. I'm trying to keep up with like posting some of the videos that I'm watching on YouTube onto Twitter so that people can see some of the things that I watch every now and again. And one of the things that I was watching that I have to refine so that I can show all of you is the idea of the word's not accumulation, moving around, readjusting, something like that. Whatever that word is, do that one. And basically seeing that people are even now beginning to get a huge amount of FOMO for the idea that Bitcoin could rise higher and that it would outperform other asset classes and other assets that they currently own. One of the largest ones, and I think we passed by silver. I think that I remember it for some reason in my head. Maybe I dreamt about it, which would be incredibly weird, is the idea of Bitcoin passing by gold. I assume the idea has been that a lot of the original people from the cryptocurrency Bitcoin space were into the idea of gold being a replacement for the dollar, or the dollar once again being backed by gold. That is to say, since the 1970s, no more gold backing, same exact thing for other countries around the world, and therefore we need a replacement to stop inflation. And then Bitcoin came along and the narrative shifted quite quickly to, well, we have something now. We can mathematically see that it is going to be scarcer than gold and all these other things. But a lot of figureheads have continuously been coming out recently. That was the other one. The one that we recently heard about was a week or so ago. It was from Plan B. Plan B being the guy who has the stock to flow ratio. And he recently mentioned on Twitter, which then also became big news, that his charts show that during this halving, not the next one, but like the one that's in less than 8 weeks, which is insane to think about. It is less than 8 weeks away. He said when we have that halving in April, Bitcoin will become rarer than gold. And he said that every subsequent halving after that will only, of course, make it rarer, to the point where he believes, and many other analysts believe, that people will simply let go of their gold and then start buying Bitcoin instead. These will be the late early adopters. I don't have the chart here, and it's really funny. I just thought of it right now. For those, there's a chart. I'll try and find it. I'll post it somewhere. There's a chart that shows like the adoption rate of like brand new assets, brand new things, TVs, television, microwaves, refrigerators. Like there's an adoption curve that every single thing for some reason follows, because humans are incredibly predictable. And it shows that in the very beginning, you'll have a couple people who get into it. It seems cool. Everyone else is used to, just throwing their stuff onto the snow or onto pieces of ice to keep their food good. And then at some point, as electricity begins to move out further and further, people start getting these like a little electric boxes and they throw their stuff inside of them. Eventually it gets bigger. Other people see that they have one. They want one as well. Yada, yada, yada. It ends up going. And on the I know that sounded insane, everything that I just said. But on the actual chart of showing the adoption of Bitcoin, if there were to be like 10 steps of adoption, I think we're on like step number 2 or 3. We're expected to hit step number 4 and 5, I think, over the course of the 2032 halving. And then from there, it's going to be just like stragglers. The people who refuse now to get into the market will also refuse to get into the market in 2032 until they realize that they kind of have no choice. They need to get something. They need to procure these Satoshis. Same exact thing with the straggling countries, yada, yada, yada. You kind of get the generalized idea. This halving, the less than 8 weeks away one, is meant to be the moment where, as we spoke about with Plan B and also spoke about, I think it was around the beginning of December of last year as well, it's meant to be the great halving. The moment where the world begins to realize that Bitcoin is rarer than gold, and we see a massive mental shift into what is deemed new money in this age of technology and the internet. And it's really, it holds a special place in my digital heart. Because when I got into crypto around 2016, 2017, this was one of the main ideas that was constantly floated around. It was this idea that eventually Bitcoin would pass gold's market cap and would pass gold in popularity. As people realize, you must have seen the photos, the videos, where people go into like a gigantic cave bunker. I don't know what they're called anymore, but there's like 95 million pieces of gold bars. And then someone places a ledger next to it, and they're like, this amount of gold's value in Bitcoin is also on this ledger. So instead of having to take up all this space and worrying about transporting all of this gold, you can simply have it on a ledger. It fits onto an airplane. You've definitely all heard it before. This is meant to be the halving. So in 2016, 2017, hearing these things, you're like, wow, 2024 is so far away. And then you're like, wait, we're here. We're at the actual halving. Cathie Wood is in the news again. Anytime she breathes heavily and it sounds like the word Bitcoin, it ends up making very popular news. The launch of Bitcoin ETFs attracted strong inflows from both retail and institutional players in the past month. Cathie Wood from ARK Invest believes that Bitcoin will replace gold among safe haven assets more rapidly than anticipated. Wood has delved into her perspective on Bitcoin's current behavior, emphasizing its role as a risk-averse asset in a perceived flight to quality amid economic uncertainties. The guy, Larry Fink, the current CEO of BlackRock, this was 2 weeks ago, I think he had an interview on CNBC where he said something similar to that. He was like, he thinks that people are realizing that Bitcoin is the thing to get into, to put their money into. And he said something along the lines of like a flight to quality, a flight to a value comparative to the inflationary US dollar and other monetary policies that we also see currently going on right now. But it's the actual giving up the gold that I think is going to be the most interesting part, because we did have news a couple of years ago that there were allegedly a number of larger companies around the world who were selling off their paper gold. So their certificates that said that they held a piece of gold with a bank, they were selling those off, and they were actually buying into Grayscale's fund to have a exposure to Bitcoin in some sort of way. So we can only assume that these companies are, still in the game, especially as BlackRock and Fidelity have moved in as well. Wood recalls a pattern observed during the regional banking crisis in March 2020. It's been less than a year? March 2023. For those of you who've missed it as well in the news recently, there's all this chatter of banks collapsing all over again, or some of them not doing well. I think there was a bank in New York that didn't do too hot, and then there was also something, just always a lot of banking stuff, where Bitcoin's price exhibited a significant 40% increase. She illustrates this period as a time when the Bitcoin price experienced notable growth, where the regional banking index, represented by KRE, faced challenges. Wood notes that Bitcoin is regaining attention in a period where the regional banking index shows signs of volatility. She claims that the concept of Bitcoin acting as a flight to quality has become more pronounced. Meanwhile, global markets, including China, are grappling with strong economic uncertainties as more investors seek exposure to Bitcoin. I'm going to try and breeze over that one because there's a lot to unpack there. China's not doing well. Like economically, like it's not. They were kind of the poster child for growth since around like 2001, 2002. It was expected. It might still happen in the 2050s. Who knows? It was expected that China would basically become like the new US, if that kind of makes any sense. Monetarily, economically, would be this like powerhouse. Not working out too well because they kind of propped themselves quite heavily onto the real estate market. But the problem was that these companies were taking out loans and the loans were taking out loans, and they were building homes that hadn't even been sold yet in anticipation of this frenzy of people just wanting to buy real estate to continue forever and brand new real estate as opposed to the stuff that they already have. And then since that's not been going too well and the world has become far more intertwined than I think a lot of people were even ready for. It was more like tie all the knots together as opposed to figuring out how to untie a knot first so that we could get out of this mess. And now because China's not doing too well, other parts of the world also aren't doing well because the people who were building in China weren't, they weren't just in one country. They moved around. They were doing other things, other places as well. So this is why we had the news very recently from Jerome Powell, even re-mentioning about lowering interest rates. Like he was like, yeah, like we're going to have to do this because the US economy also isn't looking too good. Even with the numbers, I mean, it's really what a time in history. We see all these shakeups, all these things that are happening, all these things that I heard for years were going to happen. And now to see them happening it feels a little weird. It's almost like, I don't want to use the term mystical. Mystical is like not even it at all, but you get what I mean, right? Like imagine hearing since 2016 that the US dollar at some point was going to have like really bad inflation problems. Interest rates would go completely haywire, which they did. We now have to lower interest rates. They're not even like they're high, but they're not like 17% high like they had to be in other countries to really get inflation under control. It's all this really weird stuff. Bitcoin's halving is coming up, like all this economic stuff that's happening. BlackRock and Fidelity like choosing to, and all the other companies as well. Like there are also other trillion-dollar companies choosing to get into the market like now, as we, the public, are hearing that the other, not institutions, but the other things happening around the world aren't, they're not too good. So I always wonder like what's truly taking place. And I want to see the year 2050 to be like, were we correct? Was the sky really falling? Were the banks not going to do well? Is the US dollar just dust now? Like, all these, I always have a lot of questions that need to be answered in some sort of way. Wood explained the recent dip in Bitcoin's price as a situation guided by expected purchases leading the way for the launch of 11 ETFs. Followed by the subsequent sell the news phenomenon, typically driven by opportunistic trading strategies and also the people from Grayscale not understanding that they shouldn't be selling their stuff directly to Coinbase. But that's neither here nor there. Supporting her perspective, Wood shared a chart comparing Bitcoin's price to gold, demonstrating a strong long-term upward trend. According to Wood, this trend reflects the ongoing process of Bitcoin partially replacing gold in the investment landscape. There's another video. I'm going to try and find it as well. I know I keep saying that over and over, but I'm going to try. There's a video I watched yesterday. It was regarding Bitcoin in, I think, Latin America. And then a portion of the video was also, they went to Frankfurt. And they were talking to members of the European Central Bank. And these people were so annoyed. They were so annoyed that Bitcoin existed. One of them, the guy said something along the lines of like, the world would be a lot better off if everyone just forgot about Bitcoin. And the commentator or whoever was talking to him was asking, they said, why do you feel that way? They said, well, it's really annoying because we don't have control over Bitcoin. Like, we can't control the creation of it. And we what was it? We believe that the only way that money should be valued is by like the terms of the government, is something along those lines. Like, we make it, we print it, you use it because we tell you to. And they were talking about how, like, if Bitcoin continues to like grow at its current rate, at some point, like, other currencies will fail, but this is bad for the system because they control the system. And if they don't control the narrative, then they begin to lose a lot of their power. And I was like, you just said that out loud. You said the words that, like, we've speculated for a while that was the issue. I'm going to try and find it. It was I think it was a DW documentary on Deutsche Welle. So a lot of times they will, on their page, they post documentaries in German, but sometimes they also post them like in English, like dubbed as well. So you kind of get the same exact thing. Yeah, very, very weird time. Very, very weird time to be in the market, or just on the planet. All the news that we've been getting about Bitcoin accumulation, for those of you who've been missing it, like the amount of Bitcoin that these companies hold now, it's like staggering. Like, it's not like, oh, wow, look how much. It's like, oh my gosh, like, is there going to be any left for anyone in the next couple of months? It's getting real. And I, this is me personally. What I'm kind of waiting for now, and it's not an I told you so moment, that's not for all of you, but it's for people I know who kind of just stand on the sidelines, or a lot of friends who, for some reason, have been skeptical of me being in this market over the course of the last like 7 to 8 years. I told you about some of them before who make little like weird, side comments, but I think 100K per coin is going to be like their moment where I don't know. They're going to have to be like, okay, how do I get into this? Because I know that I don't have much time left. Yeah, very, very popular news. As always, I love sharing this chart for those of you who've never seen it. It is the price of Bitcoin versus gold over the course of the last 14.3 years. The point of the chart is to show the growth monetarily of Bitcoin compared to gold. It is, for those of you looking and not looking at the screen, I guess more so looking because there are lines here. If you had to put $1 into Bitcoin 14.3 years ago comparative to gold, the $1 in Bitcoin is this line right here. You would have 38 million US dollars. If you had put $1 into gold, it's this line right here. You'd have $1.94. You would not have even doubled your investment. Bitcoin is currently the best performing asset ever in humanity. Ever. Not like in the last 10 years, not in the last 2 decades. Nope. It is ever. Over the course of the time that it's been around, the amount of growth that it's had, and the percentage of growth, it is the best performing asset. It is up by millions of percent. And this is also, what do you call it? A lot of people are going to be looking back at these charts when we hit the previous all-time high, when we go to $100,000 per coin, and if we end up hitting that $1 million Bitcoin, this will be a chart that will be marked in history forever. That's at some point people are expecting, and I mean like soon, the next couple halvings, beginning this one, for Bitcoin to kind of take over gold market cap wise and also usage wise. It does make sense, even with this chart right here, but also from a convenience standpoint. And yeah, let's move on. Also in quite popular news, GoDaddy, which sounds like a kind of movie, and Ethereum name service, the ENS, have formed a partnership to enable domain name users to attach their domains to the Ethereum name service in a convenient manner. Furthermore, this will result in cost savings and eliminate the need for technical expertise. GoDaddy is the place where basically you can, I think, get like web names. So if you want like a website name, you would go to WebDaddy. Web Daddy. You would go to GoDaddy. I mean, to be fair, stop. No, the name is ridiculous. It's called GoDaddy. So if I, don't say it correctly, forgive me. Basically, you go to GoDaddy and you get your web name from there. The idea of the Ethereum name service. So I think most blockchains have like a name service. So you know how when you're trying to send money to someone on a blockchain, it has that long like 43x12y314, like those long string of things. It's basically trying to convert that into like a short domain web name. This is why we're also seeing like a lot of the like so-and-so.eth all around the place, because it makes it a lot shorter than having to do the entire thing. And apparently now they've joined together to make it even easier, where you'll be able to attach your Ethereum name to your website name as well. The integration of blockchain technology with the domain name system, DNS, will result from this partnership. GoDaddy is a leading... GoDaddy is a leading provider of web hosting and domain listing for the uninitiated, whereas Ethereum name service specializes in naming systems based on blockchain technology. I don't really have to read any more. This was also very popular news as far as like GoDaddy being really, almost said another word, being very popular, and Ethereum name service also being very popular within the cryptocurrency space as well. They've partnered together, and now it appears you can now link both names together, which would only make it easier. If someone's looking for your web address, they'll also be able to find your Ethereum address as well. Yeah, we're living in the future. That's the GoDaddy news. I really like, I don't know. It works. It totally works. I was going to say, like, I wonder where people think of their website names from. But I mean, like, how memorable is that? Like, apparently it worked out for them because everyone is using it and has I guess a catchy name? Okie dokie. All right. Let's move on. Also in the popular news, the Hong Kong subsidiary of the Chinese asset management firm Harvest Fund Management has applied for a spot Bitcoin ETF. You might remember the name Harvest Fund Management. We had news about them a couple of days ago. They're the company in Hong Kong who has just applied with the bank, the government, I don't know, to launch a stable coin. So they're back in the news again. Not only are they trying to launch a stable coin that is based off of the Hong Kong dollar, but they're also trying to do it as well with a Bitcoin ETF, a spot Bitcoin ETF. It says this marks the first submission of its kind in Hong Kong. Tencent News reported on Monday. The Securities and Futures Commission, or the SFC, is said to be expediting approval of the ETF's launch, which is expected to be listing on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. They're apparently aiming for anything after the Chinese New Year, and the launch date for the Hong Kong Bitcoin Spot ETF is expected between the 10th and the 17th of February. Harvest Fund Management is primarily a Chinese asset management firm offering services to pension and profit-sharing plans, insurance companies, and enterprises. As of 2001, the fund managed assets worth around $121 billion US. So the story goes, Hong Kong is officially into crypto. We've had a couple of news stories over the course of the last month or two that apparently, a lot of people within China, in order to actually trade crypto, have allegedly been going down to Hong Kong, down south, to do so. The news is that apparently the government is kind of all for it. People believe that Hong Kong might be used as a test site, a sandbox of sorts, to see if cryptomania ends up taking over the country or how well it can be managed in a smaller province. And therefore, people are assuming that if everything goes well within Hong Kong, if everything works out regulatorily, then people will or may have access to it directly in mainland China without having to go down south to Hong Kong to be able to deal in crypto. And as we've seen, proper support from the Hong Kong government For those of you who weren't here, people were basically asking them for things and asking them for help. And the government was like, sure, we got you. Like it took no more than a couple of weeks for a lot of things. So I think another gigantic annoyance is going to be the fact that we had news at the end of December that apparently, allegedly, a number of companies were going to try and launch a Bitcoin ETF within Hong Kong. And now anytime between the 10th and 17th of February, a company will have one. So apparently it doesn't take 10 years, Gary Gensler, to have a spot Bitcoin ETF. If this does happen, I think people are also going to completely lose their minds. Hong Kong, Singapore, there's one other place, are like really ready to go when it comes to crypto. And there's a lot of expectation that as there are a lot of wealthy people in these areas, if we do see them having access to these, so it's not an issue. It's just more of a lot of governments are still in the 1920s. A lot of governments only feel comfortable with things that are issued within their borders. So the moment that the spot Bitcoin ETFs came out within the United States, we saw that there were a number of countries who restricted their citizens from actually gaining access to the U.S. spot Bitcoin ETFs because they said they didn't. I don't know what the thing was anymore, but it was like, no, we want them to only use the ones within our country. I guess it's easier for taxation reasons for the countries to be able to say, hey, you were born in Hong Kong, you're using one in Hong Kong, therefore we can tax you in Hong Kong. It has to be something along those lines. I'm not really sure exactly, but it's always taxation. It's always money. It's always something from the government. So what we're seeing now is that a lot of other countries, even if you've been paying attention, and if you haven't, it's fine. Like I do not assume that any of you would have willfully found this news. Before the US had spot Bitcoin ETFs, I told you a multitude of other countries already had them. And Canada was one of the first, I think, since 2021, 2022. Canada, I think, has multiple spot Bitcoin ETFs and multiple Ethereum spot ETFs as well, which is, fantastic. The fact that they already exist, but people keep pretending that they're not there. Those have also seen a massive amount of inflows. That is to say, those funds are also buying up huge amounts of Ether and huge amounts of Bitcoin as well, but they never get spoken about in the actual equation. So you'll notice that like a lot of the news quite recently has had to do with just BlackRock and Fidelity Bitcoin accumulation. People have for some reason completely thrown out the idea that there are like 7-8 other companies within the US who are also doing it. The MicroStrategy news, we know that ARK Invest is also always buying up Bitcoin, as are all the major figureheads and Jack Dorsey and all the other CEOs of all these crypto exchanges. And the people forget that there are already spot ETFs in other countries, and they're holding billions of dollars worth of crypto as well. And they're also accumulating more as the US ones gain more popularity. The people in Canada and other countries are also buying them as well. So the idea would be is that this company would essentially, if approved, would also start buying up hundreds of millions and then billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin as well. Yeah, the accumulation's crazy right now. Crazy time to be in the market. I'm just waiting for, and excuse my French here, I'm waiting for stuff to kind of pop off, because you cannot, it is literally mathematically impossible to have this level of accumulation and not have the market like positively react in some sort of way. So, that's the potential Hong Kong spot ETF news. If it happens, it'll be all over the news and people will go completely bananas for it. Yeah, I do sincerely hope that you have all enjoyed. I do hope that you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever the heck you might be. I do hope it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and or supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.